was awesome. All right, I'm going to cheer you up just a little bit. Wake you back up here. A little bit. God, you are. I think you are. I hope you know this one.
Every mountain, God you are. Every ocean, God you are. Every canyon, every inch of earth and sky, God you are. Every morning, God you are. Every midnight, God you are. Every moment, every second of my life. Every sunrise, God you are. Every moonbow, God you are. Every starshine, every inch of earth and sky, God you are. Every springtime, God you are. Every snowfall, God you are. Every season, every second of my life. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. 'Cause you are the very air I breathe. And your perfect love created me. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you. Everything I see, everything I do, everything I am is you. Everything above, everything below, everything I know is you.
Good morning. Good morning. Okay, want to make sure. All right. My name is Mary Teresa True, and I'm a chaplain here, and I also get the privilege of directing the chaplain, and I get to be our platform assistant today. We want to begin this time together by sharing our opening affirmation. I will say it once and then ask you to repeat it with me. There is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the Good. Together, please. There is only one presence and one power active in my life and in the universe, God the Good. This is Unity's foundation principle: one presence, one power, one life living through each and every one of us. This morning, we get to hear from the Wrights and the choir for music. And Dr. Reverend Jane will be speaking on No Greater Gift. And may I welcome you to Mother's Day. We are blessed by singing our community song this morning, which is...
It is called Immortal. It's Jane Garrett and J.D. Martin. We're going to do that kind of interestingly today, so stand if you can. We're going to have you sing the na-na-na-na part with us. If you don't know it, the words are na-na-na-na. And what we're doing a little different than last time is we're going to have you sing the chorus with us, which is So We Find Our Center. And when you get to that part, you'll know it. But I'm going to teach you the na-nas. It goes like this. Na-na-na-na-na-na. Yeah, you remember it. Good. We do our best to be immortal and leave a legacy behind. Nobody cares about how we struggle to be a legend in our own mind. Where everybody wants to be a hero. We try to stick our claim to fame, but what we take adds up to zero. It's what we give that wins the game. And so we find our center and we get a little bit better and we learn to trust our heart and soul. Yeah. And now I finally get I don't need regret, 'cause my heart is worth its weight in gold, right? I'm gonna do it all the way before I go. Let's sing na 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 na. Na 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 na. We offer up a random acts of kindness. Nobody ever needs to know. The ones we help may never find us. We keep in touch by letting go. And so we find our center and we get a little bit better and we learn to trust our heart and soul. And now I finally get what I don't need credit, 'cause my heart is worth its weight in gold. And I'm gonna give all the way before I go. Well, I can change this world by trying to hold on. A gift that's freely given lives on in. Sing with me now. Well, we find our center and we get a little bit better and we learn to trust our heart and soul. And now I finally get that I don't need no credit, 'cause my heart is worth its weight in gold. Well, I'm gonna get all the way before I finally hear you out there. Na, 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 na. Come on, you guys are gonna give it away today. Here we go. Na, 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 na. I'm gonna give it all away. Na, 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 na,
All right, that's what I'm talking about. So, my name is Dr. Gary, and this morning I am your annoncier. That's right, annoncier. It's a step up from just the normal announcements that happen. And of course, I'm trying to follow in the legacy that has been established by Dennis Ashley. However, I'm afraid I might fall a bit short, but we'll see by the end of the announcements. So the first announcement is that today is Mother's Day, and we're celebrating that by hosting a wildly special sale of Mother's Day flowers. And so if you'd like to support our Youth in Unity, Youth of Unity, please avail yourself. It's available for a suggested love offering. So thank you for that. We want to appreciate our choir today for our treats. Thank you, choir. As well as extra goodies that have been shared in the celebration of Lloyd Jacobson's life yesterday as a memorial service. So there are plenty of leftover celebration treats from that event as well. And I've been told to say that next Sunday's treats will be provided by those who have only been married once. So that leaves me out. So if you've been married twice, it still leaves me out. 3 times still leaves me out. So I won't go any further than that. Then also I want to mention that Sacred Rumble. Is it Rumble? Rumble, not Rubble. Okay, so you know what we're talking about. It's our annual tradition of trying to make up for the shortfall over the summer. So this summer's shortfall is going to be made up by this summer's rummage sale. So we're hopeful that you'll participate in that. So donations are received, slightly used treasures are received today until 2 o'clock, and then also on Wednesday from 10 until 2.
No, 2 till 6.
2 to 6. On Wednesday? 2 to 6. Yes?
The event is this week, so people we're going to be here.
Okay, we're going to be here. That's right. We'll be here setting up.
Other days.
So during the week, this place is going to be transformed. Right. Right. Come soon. All right. So as a segue to calling David up, who is going to share a bit about his rites of passage service that's upcoming, I want to share something. So those of you who are familiar with me know that I don't do any rites of passage or special services. I don't do weddings or funerals or christenings because I've had experiences that have been traumatic in this arena. And I want to share, I want to offer an explanation as to why I don't do these things, and you'll understand why. So from the very beginning, I've always been nervous reading. That's why I've committed most of everything I have to say to memory. And so this is why, because I have difficulty, and I wasn't accepted into Stephen's reading group, which is why. It's sort of my Q process story. Anyway, so here I am practicing reading a poem that I read during a marriage ceremony when I used to do this. And I would say something like, may you look for things to praise and often say, I love you. And then the following line says, and if you have quarrels that push you, and may you often say I love you, and take no notice of small faults. And if you have quarrels that push you apart. Okay, so the 2 lines, and may you not, and may you, I know I'm having trouble even seeing. May you take no notice of small faults. And then the next line is, if you have quarrels that push you apart. And so here I'm trying to be present to the newlyweds, and here I'm trying to read a line ahead, and here I'm saying, and may you look for things to praise and often say I love you, and take no notice of small farts. And so the groom looks at me, so after that, I stopped doing certain special services. David? Let's welcome David, Reverend David McClure.
Thank you, Gary. Well, I have a story to add to that list of embarrassing moments when you're doing a rite of passage. I was doing a memorial service for a member of the Hells Angels in San Francisco. Gary was in my congregation at that time, and around the corner was the Scottish Auditorium. And one of the Hells Angels had, on his motorbike, had met with his demise. So the place was packed with leather jackets and, these bikers. And I was there to, the bikers, yes. And I was there to do a rite of passage for this deceased. And Donna was sitting in the front row, and I'm starting the service, and she keeps looking at me and pointing. I don't know what she's pointing at, so I'm going to look down, and my fly is open. So I said, let us all bow our heads and pray. So sometimes you're on your own. We've all been through a lot of stuff in our life, passages, turning points, key moments in our life of transition and change. And sometimes we've had to do those things alone, and sometimes we've had support. We've had encouragement. We've had someone standing up with us while we're going through this experience. I think that Mary, as the head of the chaplain program, knows that our chaplains are here to support you through rites of passage, whatever they may be. Well, on June the 10th, Sunday, June the 10th, Don and I will be doing a service that Sunday. Gary and Jane will be at Unity Village. So we've called this service Rites of Passage. And I'll be giving a talk on that. Don will be leading the meditation. We've got some special music from Shawnee. And we will also be standing up with you if you are going through any kind of transition in your life, whether you would like to renew your wedding vows or divorce somebody right on the spot, or whatever transition you may be going through, graduation, christening of children. Maybe you're starting a new job. Maybe you're retiring from a job. Maybe you're going in for surgery. Maybe you've had an awesome diagnosis of something going on in your life. Any kind of major shift or change in your life, selling your house, buying a new house. We're going to provide a portion of that service to stand up with you, and you're invited to bring your family and have them stand with you too as you talk about this particular change in your life. There's a sign-up sheet out by the desk near the chapel where you can sign up, because we're going to be giving certificates for this rite of passage for you, so we need to know what it's for. What are you standing up? What's going on in your life? And you can sign up, and we'll provide that for you on June the 10th. Thanks very much.
Begin by settling into a comfortable position. Taking a moment to mentally separate from all of the activities that brought us right here. And shift into a higher level of understanding and stillness. You will be much more effective and peaceful because of this time. Begin to slow the chatter in your mind by turning your focus towards your breathing. Take a deep, full breath in through your nose, then slowly exhale through your mouth. Allow your breath to stay low, full, and deep. In this place of growing stillness and quiet, you now are becoming more and more open to things of a higher nature. It is as if you are shifting planes, and the worries and stresses of life are now appear to be distant. You are rising above the clouds, and you can begin to see clearly the sun and feel it shining on you. You realize from this new vantage point that this sunshine has always been here, always surrounding you. From this place, you are anxious to bask in the light and build your reserves of light and truth, and to better see the truth of who you are. Now, bring to mind an image of your mother and allow my words to become her words. Please know, my dear one, that I did the very best I could. Please forgive me for not having the patience I could have. I wasn't always there for you, and yet I loved you. I loved you just the way you are. I didn't always say the right thing. They weren't perfect. But I did what I knew best at the time. I am afraid that I was not always awake and noticing the little things. Life gets crazy. Please forgive me for not always hearing everything you wanted me to say. Please forgive me for the mistakes I have made. And forgive yourself for perhaps not understanding what was going on at the time. Your worth does not change with moods or circumstances. You are not your accomplishments or your failures, your strengths or your weaknesses. These are merely expressions of your deeper self as you continue to improve. I have noticed that you have learned through the natural consequences of your actions. I did miss things when I was afraid and scared. I often forgot to relax and enjoy you. Yet, my dear one, I enjoy you deeply. There were times that I reacted out of fear because I was struggling with my own hurt. Please know this is not an excuse, it just is. If I could do it over, I would have smiled more, held you a little longer, and listened more. You deserve the very best. And I ask you to forgive me. And now I say, keep moving forward. I believe in you. Ask questions, lots of questions. I am so proud of the person that you have become. You are a good one, you are. I am excited and in awe of your potential. You will become what you are searching for. I have seen the person that you have become, and I am proud. May you know that you are valued and loved beyond your comprehension. You are precious to me. I marvel and cherish and adore you. You deserve the very best. I value and respect you for who you are today. And above all, love one another and make good memories. Now, let us take a time to honor our mothers. At this time, if it feels right for you, please whisper speak the name of your mother. Whisper speak the names or name of the woman who has been like a mother to you. May you know that at your very core, you are a glorious being of infinite worth and potential. Imagine yourself allowing this truth filling you so completely that you find yourself believing this affirmation about you. I am a unique and glorious being of infinite worth and potential. Let us breathe this in the silence for just a moment. I am valued and loved beyond my comprehension. Return to this place as often as you need to. Remember your mother inspiring you, loving you, and knowing for you that you are a glorious being of infinite worth and potential. May you know this forever. May you know you are loved. And now, when you are ready, bring your attention back to this room and the chair you are sitting on, and open your eyes when you are ready.
In the stillness of this moment, there is peace, there is peace. In the stillness of this moment, there is peace, there is peace. And I rest and trust and breathe and know. In the stillness of this moment, there is peace.
So sweet, there's love.
In the stillness of this moment, there is love. There is love. In the stillness of this moment, there is love. There is love. And I rest and trust and breathe and know. In the stillness of this moment, there is love.
Beautiful. Thank you. Let's breathe in all that love, shall we? The stillness of this moment. Thank you, Mary, for those words of love that we all wished we'd heard or did hear. Thank you for that. Good morning. Good morning. Happy Mother's Day to all the moms. My mother passed away nearly 11 years ago, and there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think of her and what a gift she was and still is to my life. I'm going to be talking about one of those gifts this morning, although it took me a few years to unwrap it. I'm just saying. So Mother's Day can be kind of bittersweet for me. It's a joy connecting with my kids and my grandkids. And I want to welcome my daughter and grandsons who are joining us by live streaming. Hi, Mason. Hi, Liam. I love you. And Melody, love you too. And I'm not sure if my son and his family were able to join us. If so, I love you all. Kevin, Kira, Alexander, and Julian, everybody, thank you. So it's a joy to connect with our kids and our grandkids And at the same time, I miss my mom. I just miss my mom. So it can be a difficult time for many of us, depending on what kind of relationship we had with our mothers, depending on whether our mothers are alive or not, if we're estranged in some way, or estranged from our children, or if we don't have children, or if we lost a child, whatever it is. There's so many ways this can be a very tricky day for many of us. So while we want to wish all of the moms Happy Mother's Day, we also want to be mindful about how difficult this day can be for some of us. And in that spirit, it seems fitting to be talking about compassion today, about the mothering aspect of God that lives within every single one of us. And it's about the kindness and the caring and the comfort of divine love. And whether or not you would use any of those words to describe how your mother is or was, the truth is that love and compassion are needed for our growth. They're necessary. And luckily, are you ready? We have a whole storehouse of it within our own hearts, just waiting recognition, discovery, and cultivating of it. My talk title this morning is No Greater Gift. We're going to hear from the choir later singing the song, beautiful song by this name. And we're going to see that contained within our hearts, the key to our own healing is already there. It's already there. And that's a great gift. Wouldn't you agree? No matter what our upbringing may have been, we can learn to reparent ourselves by discovering the compassionate, mothering aspect of spirit within us and utilizing this inner power to give ourselves what we needed and may not have gotten growing up. Learning to do that is a vital part of our growth and our development and our evolution and actualizing our potential in becoming who we really are. Over the past few weeks, we have been climbing a ladder of transformation in a series called Evolution, Revolution. There we go. And we've been looking at various paradigm shifts that have occurred throughout human history. And the main question we've been asking is, how does cultural evolution correlate with our own personal growth and development? Does the macro out there mirror the micro within ourselves? And what can we learn about ourselves and our evolutionary journey from this? So by examining... Did I do that? I did do that. Oh, no, I didn't. Never mind. Okay. By examining the various worldviews throughout history, utilizing a system known as spiral dynamics, we see how these worldviews connect with our own individual development. And we're using the colors from this system as we go through this. And if you remember, we began on the very first rung of our ladder with beige survival during the prehistoric times when survival was the name of the game, the only game in town, 250,000 years ago. And we compared that era to infancy in our own personal development, a time when our very survival rests on our caregivers. And then we moved on up the ladder to the next period that emerged, namely purple tribal life, when people banded together in tribes for safety. And we compared that to the magical toddler years that we've had, where we are becoming part of the tribe, part of the family tribe. And last time, we looked at red warrior energy, the hero. It's a worldview that brought forth the feudal system and landowners and slavery and the Wild West shoot-'em-up stuff, rugged individualism, personal power. And we saw how that sense of self-empowerment factors in during our upbringing, that this is the time of a formation of a hopefully healthy ego. And today, we move on to the next rung. Are you ready? Yes. Because we're moving on to blue, which emerged 5,000 years ago as an antidote to the red lawlessness. Blue emerges to tidy things up. Blue is a more traditional worldview The pendulum swings from red mayhem and lawlessness to group structure in order to rein in all that personal power, with the appearance of the establishment of the rule of law, with organized religion showing up in this time period, order-driven authority structures. And I find it fascinating that during this period, as the culture transitioned from red to blue, many philosophers and spiritual pioneers were born in various countries and regions around the world, including India, China, the Middle East, and Greece. Iconic figures like the Buddha, Plato, Socrates, Elijah, Jeremiah, Confucius, and Lao Tzu. They all lived within this period. It was a pivotal era of great social change and dynamic revolutionary transformation in human thought. And it was known as the Axial Age. And out of this period comes structure, guidance on how to live, with the appearance of the Eightfold Path in Buddhism, the moral teachings of Confucius, the philosophical guide of the Tao Te Ching, warnings from the Hebrew prophets on the right way to live, repent, the foundations of Western philosophy from Socrates and Plato. So there was an institutionalizing of religious beliefs during this period. And that really, I find that so fascinating. There is some conjecture of where we are on this ladder of evolution, because where we're going to get to in this series, and I promise, is that we'll come up to the present time and we're going to look at what's next for us. What's the paradigm shift on the horizon? And there are some questions as to whether that paradigm shift might be a second axial age. So with blue, loyalty and obedience are rewarded. Follow these rules and you'll get to heaven. You see? And there's a strong belief that there's a right way to do it, and that our way is what? The right one, exactly, yes. This worldview fosters passionate patriotism, and bonded, in this case, not to the tribe, but to a larger purpose, sacrificing for something noble. And how does it show up today, in this culture today? Blue is very conservative, traditional, banks, police, military, schools, fundamentalist religion. And the us and them that started to show up in purple, my tribe against your tribe, becomes polarization. You're either with us or you're against us. And if you're one of us, you're okay, but different culture, different religion, not so much. That's very blue thinking. There is a movie out on Netflix right now called Come Sunday. I know some of you have seen it. How many? Yes, you've seen it. Spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you some of the story, but I recommend you get the movie and watch it anyway. It's very, very well done. And it's the true story about an African-American preacher, an evangelical pastor from Tulsa, Oklahoma, by the name of Bishop Carlton Pearson. He was a fire and brimstone preacher. And he had a large congregation, around 6,000 people. He was a prodigy of Oral Roberts, very, very successful. And then he had an experience of divine love. Just kind of blew it for him right there. Why? Because he felt the presence of God so strongly that he realized that the hell and damnation that he had been preaching with such great passion over these years was simply no longer true. And that he couldn't bring himself to say it anymore. And that the God of unconditional love that he now knew redeemed everyone. It didn't matter if they were part of the chosen. And so he shared that the following Sunday with his congregation. And they loved it. No, they did not. He lost most of his congregation. There was a mass exodus out the door. People left the church in droves. They had to sell the building. They had to auction off everything. And he was deserted by all of his real strong supporters. In fact, they went around the corner and started their own church without him. Oral Roberts denounced him, said that he was being deceived by the devil. And people tried to convince him to recant, just recant and come back. But he couldn't do it. Not after experiencing the love of God. Now, he still speaks in Tulsa at the Unitarian Universalist Church to a much smaller flock who gather to hear his message of love. And when I watched the movie, I realized that what I was witnessing was a clash of worldviews. That when you have a very blue, conservative, traditional congregation and you suddenly foist on them a new alternative view, the result can be devastating, as it was for him. People left because they thought they would be going to hell if they listened to him. And I saw how difficult it can be to move out of this worldview because of the cost that comes with it. But when you no longer believe what the prevailing culture does, it can be very difficult to step away without feeling that loss. By the way, Carlton Pearson is very popular in unity circles, as you might imagine, and is one of our speakers at our convention this year in June. So he's doing okay. So in our human development, this is the time period of our childhood when we're learning the rules, right? Learning the rules, learning the roles that we're going to take on, finding where we fit in, conforming to the social norms of the culture. Now, ideally, what happens in this developmental stage is that we learn impulse control and self-governance and develop a healthy conscience and a moral compass, and learn to set healthy and safe boundaries so that we can express our red personal power in a safe way. That's ideal that happens, but not always. Beige says, I will survive. Purple says, I belong. Red says, I matter. Blue says, I do the right thing. I do the right thing. It's about the roles and the rules, or what we might call brules. How many of you remember what that stands for? Okay, 1, 2, 3, we're all going to say it together. 1, 2, 3. Rules. Thank you. BS rules. That's all I say. I tricked you there. Because the cultural, what it's referring to is the cultural and social rules that we learn, and they are not necessarily healthy ones as we learn, as we grow beyond them. But nonetheless, these social rules become internalized into a sort of a hidden map. And we look through this map at the world. We can't look at the map because we're looking through the map. We don't even know we're following this map, except if we stray off the path, we have this guilt and shame that shows up. So in our family life, in our school years, in our social world, this is where we don the mask of social acceptability. Do you know what I'm talking about here? So we're talking about school age, where it's about right appearance, stability, fitting in, group norms, acceptance. And it's a time when, as George Orwell put it so succinctly and well, you wear a mask and your face grows to fit it. I thought that was very well put. It describes this era of our life very well. Learning the social rules and then not straying outside the lines. And in the family system, we learn at a very early age what's expected of us, what our role is in that family, and we take on those roles. And if you've ever seen the John Bradshaw Family Mobile, with the scapegoat and the enabler and the lost child, all those things, when somebody breaks the rules, when somebody steps out of the role that they have taken on, the whole thing falls apart. Everything's out of balance. It all goes haywire. So this is part of what this developmental stage is, taking on roles that balance the status quo. And when we do that, we are donning the mask. Do you see that? Do you see how that happens? Because as we've seen so far in this series, these early formative years have lots of potential landmines for us that can lead us to taking on beliefs that are not the truth about who we really are. And I know in my own life, during this learning the rules period, I took on wearing a mask that said, I don't measure up. I'm not good enough. I don't measure up. And here's one of the reasons why I literally didn't measure up. First of all, my birthday's in December, so in Canada that means you're the youngest kid in the class. And I was little for my age, so I was this tiny little pipsqueak, And I was with a lot of kids that were a year older than me. And if that wasn't enough, then I skipped a grade. I went into grade 3, came out in grade 5. So now I ended up with classmates 2 years older than me, and I went from friends who played with dolls to friends who went out with boys. And I never did learn the new rules. I missed some crucial ones in that step. I started high school at 12. And again, I was tiny little nerdy kid, And I spent years trying to figure out those rules, trying to catch up emotionally, feeling like I didn't fit in. Now, on top of that, I had something else to contend with in my life. My mother, that I miss so much, my mother was a strikingly beautiful woman who could stop conversation when she walked into a room. In her younger years, she had movie star looks. And those of us of an age, if you remember Connie Stevens and Debbie Reynolds, people were always comparing my mother to those glamorous movie stars. My mother loved fashion. She knew how to wear makeup. She knew how to do hair. She always looked dazzling. And everybody loved her and adored her, especially me. But I did have this one little problem. I didn't look anything like my mom. See, I didn't look anything like my mom. You could never see a family resemblance if you looked at the two of us. You wouldn't even know we were in the same family. Now, my dad, I looked like him. And don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with my dad, but if I had a choice, sorry, Dad. And I had many a chat with the universe about this when I was growing up. Because people, especially in my years of being that nerdy little kid, would take one look at my mom, and then they'd look at me, and then they'd look back at my mom, and they'd start scratching their head, and I knew what they were thinking. Some of them would even blurt it out, "What happened to you?" And I wondered that too. Now, let me assure you that I've had half a century to work through this, and I have found peace from it over the years. So there's a happy ending here. We can all just relax, and it's all going to be all right. Interestingly, I had a particularly powerful healing moment around this in my more recent past, courtesy of one of my great heroines in life, Carrie Fisher. And her mom, Debbie Reynolds, right? Yes, there she the one that my mother looked like, right? Debbie Reynolds. When Carrie passed away in December of 2016, you may remember that her mother, a couple days later, also died. And at that time, I happened upon an interview that Oprah had done with the two of them in 2011. And I watched it. I'd never seen it before. And at one point, Oprah asked Carrie how it felt to grow up in the shadow of a glamorous mother. And I sat forward for this. And she said, "I felt like a thumb." And I said, "I know how that feels. Oh my God." And there's nothing wrong with thumbs. They're great for they're useful for peeling oranges and loosening car jar lids and texting, video games. They set us apart from much of the animal world. They're very functional, but they are not glamorous. And so I could understand Carrie's description. It rang true for me. I know what that feels like. But then there was an unexpected bonus that came from that interview later on with something Debbie Reynolds shared. And it helped me see something that I had missed before. And she proudly announced that by far her greatest joy in life was that she was now known as Princess Leia's mother. The tables had turned, and people no longer saw her as the young, glamorous movie star. And when she said that, I flashed back to a memory of my first ministry in my hometown in Canada. And my mother would be sitting right where you are, Mary, front row every Sunday, beaming away. And she loved being known as Jane's mom. In fact, she would introduce herself. "Hi, I'm Jane's mom." And I'd say, "Mom, you have a name." No, it wants to be Jane's mom. And I realized at that point that sometime in her life, my mother had traded glamour for relationship. Happily so. And I think those years of being a beauty queen were a great burden for her. And as a young adult, I finally came into my own, just as Carrie did. I stopped wishing I could look like my mom. I became my own self. But those years of feeling like a thumb have taken their toll. It's not so good for your self-esteem, especially in those pre-adolescent years of trying to find where you fit in socially. That was so tough for me. Did you ever feel like you didn't fit in when you were growing up? Anyone? Yes. I mean, we all have our own version of this story. It may not have been quite as dramatic and in your face as mine, but we all get messages that are less than healing. They don't tell us the truth about who we are, and we take on beliefs that we're not good enough, don't measure up in some way, the world's not safe, whatever it is that we do. It's just part of being human that happens. So we want to have great compassion because that's the gift in it. The big gift is that we can now, as adults, revisit those years and reparent ourselves, addressing those limiting beliefs with love, with compassion, changing them into new life-affirming ones. And we do that through the Q process. Yes, we do. And I want to invite any of you who may be suffering from anything from this era of your life to do it. Use the Q process. It has helped me immensely to overcome this. The greatest gift that this era brought to me was this: that I had to turn within to find the beauty of life. That I just gave up trying to be my mom, trying to be as beautiful as my mother, and said, I'm looking elsewhere. And finding this deep well of love and compassion, the divine feminine within my own heart. And I cultivated it. I developed that compassion both for myself and for all of us that have been through this crap. Really. And I no longer feel like a thumb. I'm happy being me. What a great gift that is. Now there's another gift that comes from this stage of development in our lives, and that is the development of self-discipline. That's where we have the inner strength to go and do this healing work. Now, self-discipline may not be on the top of your list as your favorite attribute. But what I discovered is that it turns out that compassion has both a feminine and a masculine side. The feminine side is the loving, the nurturing, the kindness, devotion, compassion, those lovely things. The masculine side is discernment and discipline. Having the courage to look within and see what these pain points are when we've been triggered, and then discerning what that means. And then having the strength and the discipline to overcome whatever's in our way, making changes when needed. Both aspects of compassion are necessary to transform our lives. So blue energy brings structure, order, tradition, guidelines to live by. The danger is we can get so stuck on following the rules, we're afraid to step out and color outside the lines. Now that definitely happened to me in my childhood. I stayed safely within that box until I became a teenager in the 60s. Sorry, Mom. Then the struggle was even more difficult for me. I wanted to stretch my wings, and at the same time, I was very fearful of the consequences. So I had this dichotomy. And we need to find a balance between tradition and innovation, between compliance and cooperation, between a healthy conscience and guilty self-condemnation. We want to find that balance. Structure and order are good and necessary, but if they become a prison cell, they are not. And we want to keep it in balance. Some of those family rules we learn, not so good, not so healthy. And we want to clean up what may still need to be integrated. But on this paradigm climb, we're not just fixing the unhealthy stuff, we're also enhancing what's working. Remember, as we climb up this ladder, we transcend and include what came before. We don't lose the altitude we've already gained as we climb. So keep what works. And heal what's holding you back from stepping up to the next rung. What's holding you down? What's weighing you down on your climb? That's what you want to clean up And the cue process can be so beneficial for that. So when it comes to rules, I say it's time for new rules. Any Bill Maher fans here? If you are, don't worry, these are nicer rules than you might see on his show. New rule, question everything. Those family traditions may have survived because of their value. Then again, they may be just what's holding you back from evolving into your next grandest version of who you are. So are the rules you live by weighing down your trip up the ladder? If you find yourself saying things like, well, we've always done it that way, well, it's a bit of a clue. That might be. So simply question what you have accepted as the way it is. Byron Katie has some great questions to ask to get the ball rolling, starting with, is it true? Question your thoughts. New rule, give yourself compassion if doing any of this brings up fear of breaking the rules. Now, I'm not telling you to go out and break the law. I'm just talking about widening your inner playground a little bit. And if you feel discomfort, give yourself the mothering, the nurturing, the caring kindness that already lives within your heart, the same way you would do it for a child who is feeling anxious, because compassion brings forth a higher functionality that helps to override the fight or flight survival reactivity. See? It's really a powerful thing to do. And finally, new rule, remember the masculine aspect of compassion, discernment, and discipline. When you find yourself triggered, look and see what may be there. Look. And then use your self-discipline to rise up and do the work to overcome. If you have done the cue process, do a worksheet when you're triggered. If you haven't done it, the next one is July 21st. Mark your calendar. Here's the thing. We are here to face our own stuff and to grow beyond it. Do you know that about yourself? Yes. It's our greatest task in life, is to get beyond our own rules. But it's time. Isn't it time? It really is. It's time for us to step into living a smaller version of what we want to see in the larger world. I read this morning that to be a good parent, become the person you want your child to be. So it's all about our own transformation. Parker Palmer said it simply and best. We are here not only to transform the world, but also to be transformed ourselves. And that is the greatest gift of all. And so it is.
Thank you, Jane. And I want to thank all of you for providing an environment for us to be ourselves. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Unity stands for peace in the presence of conflict, for love in the presence of hatred, for forgiveness in the presence of injury. Unity honors the many names for God, the many paths for God, for we know that there is only one presence, one power, one life. So whoever you are and wherever you are on your journey of transformation, you are welcome here. We would especially like to welcome anyone who's here for the very first time. If this is your first time visiting with us, please feel comfortable raising your hand. Our ushers have a packet for you. Anybody here for the first time? Welcome, welcome. And on the packet, there we go. On the outside of the packet, there is a form you can fill out to be added to our mailing list for our weekly e-newsletters or quarterly newsletter. If you are interested, please fill it out and drop it in the love offering basket as it comes around instead of feeling obligated to give a donation. Also, after the service, take the packet over to the barista stand and get a free beverage of your choice. And you can take it to our bookstore and also get a CD of today's talk if you are interested. And we are very glad that you're here. Now it's time to welcome and greet each other with a handshake, a hug, a high five, a wave, a namaste, whatever works for you. We begin with this welcome song.
We're going to sing a gathering song. If you can stand up and rock for me to do that. We are gathering in song. miracles inside. We are everything
Good morning.
Good afternoon, Jim.
Yeah, well, good afternoon. Yeah, we're getting closer, aren't we? It could be good night if people don't sit down. Whoa. My name is Jim Sledge, and I am the treasurer on your board of trustees. And this is the time in our service where we welcome and receive your gifts, your tithes, your love offerings to support this place where we all belong. So if you would take that gift in your hand and bless it with all the love and gratitude that you feel, and let's join in saying our prosperity blessing together. I know that my name blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, and all that I give and receive. I give thanks for the abundance that is mine to share. And so it is.
So I'd like to take just a quick, brief moment this morning to put a thank you out to all of these folks here. This is Hug a Choir Member Day, in honor of Mother's Day, of course. So after our service out here, we have our treats, be sure and thank a choir person. These folks come in as volunteers for 6 hours a month, an hour and a half rehearsal a week, and on that note alone, they put in over 60 hours. But combined with our show this year and the extra hours each person's put in, it's probably closer to 90 to 100 hours each person put in this year. It's a lot of volunteer hours. They're a marvelous group of people, really easy to work with, and I have special thanks to Sally Sledge for doing all of our email work, and for Jeff Hunter for doing librarian work. Very big special thanks to Tony for the hours of piano work, and to the group for all the excellent stuff we're doing. And you have to check out her shirt. She's actually wearing a shirt of her mom today. Her mom. The song is called No Greater Gift. We've sung it on Mother's Day before. It's actually from 1 Corinthians. Those of you in the know it as 1 Corinthians. And it reads, and now these three remain, faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. It's a very, very, very beautiful song. The words pretty much speak for themselves, as you're about to hear. I told the first service this morning just something that I caught this morning. If you didn't see Jake Capper's graduation speech that he made yesterday to a bunch of collegians, check it out, because it's actually very touching, and it is literally just on compassion, how we all just need to get back to that point. And it'll make you appreciate it. Give it a look if you can. What he had to say is the inside of these words.
Of
take a moment to bless these love offerings and know that the hands that provided them will serve the hands that are needy. We are so very grateful in Unity Spiritual Center for the gifts that we have and the gifts that we receive and the gifts that we can turn around and give again. Thank you, Mother, Father, God. Amen. Now it's time for our chaplains, and I know Julian has been back holding the presents, and Gary, Kathy, and myself, a whole bunch of us. Oh, yeah. So one of the things that we've been doing as chaplains is holding the presents between the message and prior to that with the meditation. And I tell you, after experiencing that myself, we had a great conversation this last Monday night meeting about what that means for us as holding the presents. But if ever you've ever thought about becoming a chaplain, that might be a good reason to do that. It's an amazing, different way to experience the service and to uplift all of us that are here. My two friends here, Kathy and Gary, will be available to you to share anything if you have a life-changing, where's life of passage, where's David, anything that you can, heavy on your heart or something you'd like to celebrate. They're here to celebrate with you. Thank you guys for doing that. All right. I want to also remind everybody that I am still doing my meditation class on Wednesdays in the month of May. This Wednesday, I'm going to be doing an affirmation and denial mantra in the chapel to begin with, and then we will go out to the labyrinth and walk the labyrinth using that mantra. So you might like to participate. It's at 6:30 and we're done at 7:30. So you are invited. And I think now is time for the children.
We are singing for the stars and we are singing for the stars alive. We are singing for the stars and we are singing for the stars alive. We are singing, oh, we are singing for the stars alive. We are singing, oh, we are singing for the stars alive. 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 We are singing, whoa, we are singing for the stars alive. We are singing, whoa, we are singing for the stars alive. We are singing for the stars alive.
So here's our future. What do you think? Let us know this blessing for our children. Be the love you are, sing the song you hear, share your joy of life with people far and near. And can we love that for ourselves? Be the love we are, sing the song we hear, share our joy of life with people far and near. All right, and thank you. So if you could all go back to the people you came with, your caregivers, your parents, your grandparents. The YOU, which are standing over here, would like to, I want to thank them for putting those flowers together. They're absolutely beautiful as you go out. Those are on love offering basis. Please feel free to support our YOU. Thank you. Here we are. Okay, so if you would all like to please stand and join us in our prayer for protection. The
Light of God surrounds us. I am the light of God. The love of God enfolds us. I am the love of God. The power of God protects us. I am the power of God. The presence of God watches over us. I am the presence of God. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And that's the truth. So remember, if you ever feel like a thumb, give yourself compassion and turn it to a thumbs up. And so it is.